Stranger Things, Tales from 85 expands the world of Stranger Things with an adventure in between seasons, but this left some plot holes and questions. After its divisive ending, it didn't take long for Netflix to return to Stranger Things, though this time with the show's first spin-off. Titled Tales from 85, it's an animated spin-off set between seasons 2 and 3 of the main show, thus exploring what the young Hawkins team did after the closing of the gate and before Starcourt Mall and the Russian base. Tales from 85 sees 11, Mike, Dustin, Will, Lucas, and Max facing new types of monsters from the Upside Down, but they're not alone. The team has a new friend and ally named Nikki Baxter, who is key to them solving the mystery of these creatures and fighting them. Although Tales from 85 is canon, it has a confusing role in the Stranger Things timeline, made even worse by some plot holes and questions. While Tales from 85 does its best to expand the world of Stranger Things and add to it without messing with the canon and continuity of the main show, it inevitably leaves some questions that won't be answered unless it gets another season. Although these questions and plot holes don't really affect the rest of Stranger Things, they can be confusing when looking at the entire Stranger Things timeline. Jonathan is notably absent in Stranger Things, Tales from 85. Unlike Stranger Things, which followed young, teenage, and adult characters, some of them splitting into teams in some seasons, Tales from 85 is all about the young Hawkins characters. Although by the time of the events of Tales from 85 the teenage characters of Stranger Things, Nancy, Steve, and Jonathan, already had their own storylines, the spin-off leaves them aside to focus on the kids. However, Tales from 85 does include Steve and Nancy, albeit in very small roles. Steve spends an entire episode with Dustin trying to lure the monster, which they then incinerate, and Nancy helps them retrieve the photo of the monster from the offices of the Weekly Watcher. It's inevitable, then, to wonder where Jonathan was during the events of Tales from 85 and why he wasn't included, more so as by then he was already with Nancy. The monsters thrive in the winter, but there was never a winter season in Stranger Things. The monsters in Tales from 85 are mutations of the Demogorgon everyone now knows so well. These are the result of an experiment that got out of control, with the monsters continuing their life cycle by spreading spores. Still, these monsters have the same weaknesses and basic characteristics as the Demogorgons, and Dustin makes a big discovery: the monsters thrive in the winter. This adds a layer of conflict and adventure to Tales from 85, but it also raises the question of why, if winter is the perfect environment for these creatures, Stranger Things never had a season set during winter. Stranger Things was either set in the fall, summer, or spring, and the only glimpse of winter was when Hopper left food in the forest for 11 at the end of season 1. A winter season of Stranger Things would have made the fight against the Demogorgon and other monsters a lot more complex and exciting, and would have required an extra effort from the entire Hawkins crew. While this reveal might be exclusive to Tales from 85 and the main show never even contemplated it, it has now raised a huge question. The Weekly Watcher was given even more material to report on, and was never heard of again. Tales from 85 gives the characters a brief break from monster hunting after they believe the threat has been destroyed, and takes them on a new mission. As it turns out, Lucas accidentally drops a photo of 11's arm and the monster, which is then sold to the Weekly Watcher, a fringe newspaper that mostly focuses on conspiracy theories, and the photo is the perfect material for them. The kids, with Nancy's help, eventually manage to retrieve the photo, but not without chaos. 11 makes the lights flicker, and the papers and files at the Weekly Watcher offices fly around, which, ultimately, would create a lot more curiosity and theories about what's happening in Hawkins. After such a display of supernatural phenomena, the Weekly Watcher would have had even more material to report on, even if they no longer had the photo. Not only is it implied that the Weekly Watcher gives up on reporting on their now-lost photo and the strange events around it, but the newspaper is never heard of or mentioned again in Stranger Things. 11's powers were forgotten in seasons 3 and 4. 11's powers are shown since season 1, and as Stranger Things progresses, her powers are explored more deeply and even evolve. In season 2, 11 is briefly trained by her sister, Callie, who teaches her how to better control her powers, which comes in handy in the rest of Stranger Things. This means that, during the events of Tales from 85, 11 has better control of her powers, but there's one, in particular, that raises some questions. During the final confrontation with the monster in Tales from 85, 11 uses her powers to levitate, kill the creature, and close the gate to the Upside Down. Now, 11 was shown levitating in the season 2 finale, though very briefly and not as much as she does in Tales from 85, so this is more an inconsistency of both shows. This particular power was forgotten by Stranger Things seasons 3 and 4, and wasn't seen again until season 5, where it was treated as a new power. The mutated monsters never appeared in Stranger Things. One of the biggest challenges Tales from 85 was going to face was that the audience would know how it ends before the show even begins, thanks to the events of Season 3. Even though Tales from 85 introduces a new type of monster, viewers know they will be defeated because the rest of Stranger Things never showed mutant pumpkins, vines, and other types of demogorgons. However, the ending of Tales from 85 turned this into a problem. The final scene of Tales from 85 shows half of the monster's body in the upside down, and a flower popping up from it. The flower blossoms into the head of a demogorgon, implying that this mutant monster continued its life cycle in the upside down. However, this monster was never seen again in Stranger Things Seasons 3, 4, and 5, and not even in the Abyss, but for the sake of continuity, it would be best to assume the monster didn't survive long in the upside down.